to mourn the passing of an era, the demise of an institution once held in high regard. Legacy News. For decades, these titans of the media landscape shaped our understanding of the world. They presented themselves as the gatekeepers of truth, the arbiters of reality. Yet over time, their facade began to crumble. The curated sound bites, the carefully crafted narratives, these tools of manipulation could no longer obscure the truth. The rise of podcasting, exemplified by pioneers like Joe Rogan, heralded a seismic shift. No longer were we confined to the rigid structures of traditional media. Instead, we were invited into intimate dialogues where ideas could be explored without censorship or corporate interference. As we bid farewell to Legacy News, let us remember their failures. May they atone for the countless lies, the deliberate distortions, and the suppression of dissenting voices. May they repent for their role in dividing us, rather than uniting us. In their place, a new era emerges, an era of authenticity, transparency, and direct engagement, an era where politicians are forced to confront the American people unfiltered and unmasked. So let us honor the passing of Legacy News, not with sorrow, but with a sense of liberation. Let us celebrate the dawn of a new age, where truth prevails and the people are empowered.
1000%. Mainstream media is dead. And we got to talk about Mika Brezinski and Joe Scarborough today because they have made a move that really, really represents what is happening with mainstream media. The desperation can be smelled from a country mile away. And they're desperate because of news headings like these. Breaking. On November 11th, CNN recorded its lowest 25 to 54 demo ratings for a Tuesday in nearly 25 years with only 61,000 viewers. 61,000 for a mainstream media network that is on television? Like, you could just turn on your TV and watch that. That's not some off-the-shoot podcast somewhere that you have to actively go and search for. That's not Doc Rich on YouTube. That's on your television. And all you got was 61,000? That's it? It's getting real ugly out here. It's getting real ugly out here. Another reason why they are extremely worried is this. Check out.
I don't know if you saw, but a bunch of the anchors at CNN are not renewing because their advertising is so far off that, like Chris Wallace, I think, was making $8 million a year, $9 million a year. And he just said, I'm going to go do podcasts because I think they lowballed his offer. And if they lose
well, there's a bunch
all
of
that advertising from pharma, which I think in some of these networks is a third or half, and that's all networks. That's from Fox to CNN and every MSNBC, everybody combined. If they lose advertising from pharma, it's over. Like those news networks are going to lose half their revenue overnight. That would be a death blow, Chamath, to your question.
Yeah, well, let me get back to that. So just on CNN and MSNBC, you're absolutely right that they're announcing a bunch of layoffs. Their ratings are destroyed. I think they're down. MSNBC ratings are down like 50% since the election. What that tells me is that their own audience.
Wait, sorry, since the election?
Since the election.
50%?
Yeah. And what that tells me is that their captive viewer base, who's been tuning in for years to all of this TDS, has now realized that they were deceived by MSNBC. And they've lost credibility even with their most fervent supporters.
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. And as you heard him mention there, not only have they lost the support of some of their most staunch supporters, but they're about to lose a huge chunk of their advertising due to RFK Jr. And I'm going to play this clip of RFK Jr. speaking about that a little bit previously. Check it out.
I said I did 4 in 19 months, and your network never let me on a single time. You're only telling one side of the story. And the only thing you'll report about Donald Trump is propaganda to make people despise him. And, one of the things I'm going to advise Donald Trump to do in order to correct the chronic disease epidemic is to ban pharmaceutical advertising on TV.
Yeah, so you just heard him talk about it there. He wants to ban pharmaceutical advertising on television. And that is a major part of how these networks garner their funding. That's a major part of how people like, who was it? Chris Wallace, I believe it was, makes $7 million a year, which is just absolute insanity. Like, just think about that. This guy gets, I think it was Chris Wallace, was getting paid $7 million a year, basically to get on television and lie and to read a script. Like anybody, I mean, literally anybody could do that. Anybody. Goodness gracious. I think the days of these bloated salaries for these TV networks host, it's over. It's gone. Especially once RFK Jr. gets in, it's over with. Once that funding, once that advertising is cut off, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. And I'm all here for it. I'm here all for it. But, there's a lot going on in mainstream media, like The View. Boss is desperately hunting for pro-Trump panelists after woke stars all backed loser Kamala. I've been seeing that all over the place. ABC wants to bring on a more conservative voice onto The View, because obviously, what's her name? Drawing a blank. The two conservative voices aren't really conservatives at all, not even in the slightest bit. Ana Navarro, that was one of them, and I forgot the other chick's name, but yeah, aren't conservatives at all. So they're absolutely desperate to bring on some voices, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work at all, because there's no fixing that show, in my humble opinion. But you also have stories like this. CNN boss Mark Thompson to lay off hundreds after the election day ratings wipeout. I mean, it's all over. It's all over. The ratings are down the tubes. Even a guy on MSNBC, Frank Brunny, I think that's how you pronounce his name, admitted the news doesn't have the power that it once held. And people like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brezinski know this.
Joe, because you've always been sort of the leading edge of where media is going with Politico, now with Axios. You understand the environment so well. How do Democrats, and frankly, how does legacy media need to change the way it thinks about getting information? I mean, a lot of the voters who went out and voted for Donald Trump, that so many people are wondering what happened here, they're not watching, frankly, this show. They're not reading the New York Times. They're not consuming media that way. And the Trump campaign found those voters where they live. So how do Democrats need to change the way they communicate to voters, if you think that's part of the problem?
For sure. I mean, I think all of us have to come to grips with legacy media is just not as important as it thinks it is. It is to you, it is to me. That's a relatively small group of people who rely on us for their information. And you have to go into the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And basically, the way people get information has shattered into 20, 30 different pieces. And so if you just look empirically at the numbers, Joe Rogan's more important than any of us. He just has a much bigger, hyper-connected audience that listens to his every word. So maybe listen to Joe Rogan and try to understand, like, what is he talking about? What are the guests that he has on? What are the issues that they care about? Realize that
Did you guys hear him gasp when he said that? I'm going to run it back.
Audience that listens more important than any of us. He just has a much bigger, hyper-connected audience that listens to.
Did you hear it? Joe Rogan is much bigger than any of us.
If you just look empirically at the numbers, Joe Rogan's more important than any of us. He just has a much bigger, hyper-connected audience that listens to his every word. So maybe listen to Joe Rogan and try to understand, like, what is he talking about? What are the guests that he has on? What are the issues that they care about? Realize that the gravity of right-wing discourse is now taking place on X. It's not Fox. X is what matters. Elon Musk is now, I wrote about this yesterday, arguably the most powerful civilian in the history of the country. He controls information flow. He controls multiple businesses. He has the president's ear. He's going to be in charge of some newfangled organization to gut government spending. We've not seen a person with that kind of clout across those sectors. But where his real power comes from is X. People thought he was an idiot when he bought X because he lost a lot of money. He's got a lot of money. And now he happens to have the most powerful platform on the right, and politics is downstream from information. And there's just a whole new information ecosystem out there. So for us, for you, for Democrats, for Republicans, you have to understand that you now are going to have to basically navigate 20 or 30 different parts of the ecosystem if you want to connect with the American people who vote.
They know they're on the way out. And yes, I know I buried the lead here with talking about Mika Brezinski and Joe Scarborough at the very beginning, but I'm going to get into this clip right now because Mika Brezinski and Joe Scarborough visited Uncle Trump. Yeah, the guy that they have been calling Hitler for months now, this horrible, terrible, no good, very bad person, which honestly calling a man Hitler is really, really disrespectful in my humble opinion. If you know what Hitler actually did to people, like that is just absolutely insane. Trump is nowhere near that. Like that's a slap in the face. In my humble opinion, y'all can let me know in the comment section if y'all feel the same way. But I feel like it is a slap in the face to all of those folks who lost their lives or lost loved ones due to Hitler and his regime. That is extremely disrespectful in my humble opinion. But like I said, y'all let me know what you think. But these folks went and met with Trump, and you can hear it in the way that they're speaking. They try to like toe the line of, yeah, we met with Trump, but they're trying, as they're speaking, they're trying not to piss off their base. And you'll understand it once you hear them speak, because they'll be like, yeah, we met with Trump, we had some good conversations, but we didn't agree on a lot of things, and we let him know, like they'll add in like little stuff like that where it's like, bro, you called this man Hitler and you went and sat down with him. Like, you went to his house. They went to Mar-a-Lago. They went to this man's house and sat down with who they called this horrible, terrible, no good, very bad person. Yeah. Anyway, with that being said, let's jump into it.
Okay, so here's where we are. Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Because you called this man one of the worst people that has ever graced this earth. You tried to convince the American public that this man was going to kill people. That's why. That is why you sat on national television and made it sound and seem as if this man was the devil himself walking the earth. And now you not only met with him, but you went to his home, inside of his home, and sat down with him and had a conversation. That is why. But carry on. Carry on.
5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Oh. What you realize is that your ratings are tanking. What you realize is that that check of millions of dollars will run dry here soon. That's what you realized. You realize the charades is up. You no longer have the power anymore. That power lies with independent media folks like myself and others. What you realize is that people like Joe Rogan are much more popular, much more powerful than you are. And you're afraid. That's what you realized. But I see through the charades. Doesn't work with me. Nice try, though. I respect you for trying. But you're still cooked. Carry on.
As somebody close to Donald Trump told me this past weekend, this is a president who's not seeking re-election, so maybe, just maybe, now could be the time for both parties to get to work. And I know, given the jarring headlines that we read every day, that may seem like a stretch, but think about this. Of the 150 million votes cast, Donald Trump got 50%. Kamala Harris got about 49%. So I don't know. Seems to make sense for leaders of both parties to seek common ground, if it's possible at all. And I will tell you, a lot of Democratic leaders we've talked to this past week, since the election, have told Mika and me it's time for a new approach. And when I say top Democrats, I mean top Democrats. They said, we're open, and this was before we talked to Donald Trump. They said, listen, we're open to working with the incoming president if the incoming president is open to working with us.
Yeah, the question is, though, how do we get there? Hyperbole and personal attacks will not work. My hair on fire doesn't work. We've all seen that. What also does not work is threatening political opponents with arrest, harassment, and even jail. That is a failed path. Recent history has proven that impeachments and trials turn those on trial into political martyrs and only make them more popular with the American people. Just ask Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. We know this will be a consequential presidency. The question is whether it will be constructive. It will take a new approach from all sides, from both parties, and a leader who can bring them together. And only time will tell if Donald Trump is that leader. As for us, we also let him know that we will continue to speak truth to power and push back hard when called for, as we have with all presidents.
Don't be mistaken. We're not here to defend or normalize Donald Trump. We're here to report on him and to hopefully provide you insights that are going to better equip all of us in understanding these deeply unsettling times. And I am reminded of what Marty Baron, legendary editor, told his Washington Post reporters back in the first term. We're not going to war. We're going to work.
Oh.
See what I mean? See how they try to toe the line so they didn't piss off their followers? Not going to work. Not going to work. And me personally, what they did to that man is absolutely despicable. You know, the fact that they're coming out here, and Chuck Schumer did the same thing. Chuck Schumer came out and said, you know, I'm hoping my colleagues on the other side of the political aisle, you know, realize that this mandate isn't a mandate to just go completely one-sided. We've seen how that actually, you know, how that's actually detrimental. You know, speaking about when Democrats went full go with the super progressive agenda and how it didn't work because it never will work. And he's coming out here, oh, well, you know, I hope they, want to work with us because that's the best way to get things done is by working with us. Well, let me tell you something, Chuck Schumer. We don't have to work with you. We have the numbers to not have to work with you. So take a seat and watch true leaders get this country back on track. And to Mika Brezinski and Joe Scarborough, I give you the same message. Take a seat. Sit back and watch. Be thankful that you collected these giant checks for as long as you did. But you're cooked. You're cooked. It's over with. Hang it up. Hang it up. You guys completely exposed yourselves during this last election cycle. You exposed yourselves as propagandists, not news anchors. You exposed yourselves as another wing of the Democrat Party, not completely unbiased news anchors who just speak the news to the people. That's what you're there to do, is to just tell us the news and let the chips fall where they may. Let us decide what to do with the information, but you just couldn't do that. You couldn't. You let your own bias get in the way, and you exposed yourself, because now you guys look like idiots. So, bow down and kiss the ring all you want to. It ain't gonna work. We are not coming back to MSNBC. We're not coming back to any of your networks. Hang it up. At least you made some millions as long as you did. You guys won't be broke tomorrow just because you lost your job. You'll be just fine. Peace and love. I'm out.